morning, everyone. I'd like to call to order the open meeting for Thursday, June 24th, 2021, and ask the Commission Secretary for information on today's agenda.
Each commissioner has independently reviewed the minutes of the open meeting of Thursday, June 17th, 2021, and each has informed me there's no need to discuss those minutes.
Move we approve the minutes of Thursday, June 17th, 2021.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Each commissioner has independently reviewed the agenda, and each has informed me there's no need to discuss the notices associated with agenda items 2 through 18, the 2021 report to the legislature on Wisconsin holding companies associated with agenda item 19, or the suggested minute associated with agenda item 20, dismissing the Diggers Hotline referred complaint by joint execution of a consent agreement between the commission and the respondent, and accepting the proposed consent agreement as drafted.
Move we approve the notices of investigation associated with agenda items 2 through 17.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And for agenda item 18, I move we approve the notice of proceeding.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Agenda item 19, I move we approve the report to the legislature on Wisconsin holding companies for 2021.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. For agenda item 20, docket 9300, PLI 113, I move that we agree to dismiss the Diggers Hotline complaint by joint execution of consent agreement with Haas Sons, Inc. and accept the proposed consent agreement without modification.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. That brings us to docket 9841-DE-100. This is a petition for a limited reopening and modification of final decision. And Commissioner Huebner, since you took us through the underlying docket, I understand you're going to help us
Sounds good.
get up to speed. So,
Great. On May 28th, 2021, the applicant Paris Solar Energy Center LLC submitted a petition for a limited reopening and modification of final decision related to the 200 megawatt solar generating station and 50 megawatts of battery energy storage system in Paris Township in Kenosha County. In summary, on December 29th of 2020, the Commission issued our final order conditionally approving 200 megawatts of solar PV and 50 megawatts of battery energy storage. These projects also are in separate processes of approval at MISO related to being able to inject power into the grid at those rated capacities. The applicant stated per a new process at MISO for interconnecting hybrid resources such as solar plus storage, the applicant has determined that it could maximize the solar project's 200 megawatts of grid injection capability, interconnection facilities, and network upgrades by adding 60 additional megawatts of battery energy storage to the project. In their petition for reopening, Paris Solar begins to provide additional details about the battery energy storage system they anticipate seeking additional approval for, that it would be a centralized AC coupled system. They provided more detail about the battery chemistry they plan to use. In accordance with our prior order point, they will provide us final detailed engineering plans for the BESS battery energy storage system, and they also provided more information about safety and industry lessons learned regarding fires, fire suppression, and a commitment to training local first responders. If we reopen the docket today, my suggestion is that our staff's outstanding questions about the original 50 megawatt energy storage system be combined with the analysis of this 60 megawatt battery energy storage system, and we arrive with sufficient information to make a final decision on all 110 megawatts. With that, I'm at alternative 1 to grant the request to reopen the docket. I would be at having a supplemental EA prepared and then a staff memorandum for comment on the applicant's proposed modifications to the approved project. So that's alternative 1 with those choices.
Okay.
Chair Vach.
So I was actually at Alt 2. I agree that there should be a supplemental EA to look at the additional 60 megawatts. But I think that in addition to sending out a memo for comment, and I do like your recommendation of wrapping in the outstanding requests, I do think in addition to that, that a hearing should be held.
Okay.
I know the application sort of was envisioned as no big deal, don't worry about it, but it is 60 megawatts of additional capacity. So I would be at Alt 2, and my understanding is that that would that alt 2 is additive. In other words, there would be a memo that would go out for comment. And in addition to that, I would want a hearing to be held.
Okay. Okay. Commissioner Nowak?
Thanks. I was at alternative 1 with the preparation of a supplemental EA and having it by memorandum as well, and leaving it, if a need for a hearing is determined later, the ALJ can have that, but I don't think we need to determine that now. I think we've done these before, reopeners. We're just adding on 60 megawatts to the initial application. So I think, they'll have their opportunity to be heard by memorandum. So I was satisfied with alternative.
Chair, you still having a hearing?
Yep.
Okay.
Stay at alt 2.
Okay.
Then I will move that we grant in docket 9801 CE 100, we grant the applicant's request to reopen that docket and direct completion of a supplemental EA in preparation of a staff memorandum for comment on their proposed modifications.
Second.
All three were wrapped into that, so
Right.
to the extent you're
Right.
objecting, it would be
Just to the public hearing portion.
so
I would,
you would vote in favor.
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I seconded it.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Partially. Got it. Okay. All right. Our next docket is agenda item 22, which is docket 2060-1. The application of Fort Atkinson Water Utility for an application to increase rates in order to fund their main replacement. There are a number of issues in this particular case that are uncontested, and according to the Commission Secretary, there is no need to discuss those uncontested issues. So Fort Atkinson last went in for a rate increase back in 2013, and what they're doing right now is they are proposing to increase rates for the purpose of funding main replacements. They've done an analysis and discovered that 25% of their water mains are made of spun cast iron, and those spun cast iron mains represent a vast majority of the main breaks for the utility. So typically, a water utility will fund the replacements using general obligation debt and internally generated funds. However, because this one is a pretty discrete project and it's a relatively high cost of these replacements, the city came forward with a proposal to increase rates in order to cash fund the replacements in the amount of $843,000 per year. The applicant states that they believe that this particular approach will help them to avoid additional debt and over the long term provide savings to their customers. Our commission staff's analysis indicated that funding the project through that general obligation debt could negatively impact their capital structure, while their proposed cash funding has the potential to help maintain a more balanced capital structure. So typically, this type of funding raises issues of intergenerational equity, but because this is a very specific plan and it's unique to Fort Atkinson's system, funding it this way could result in the mains being replaced at a more stable rate, and that would be more equal to their useful life, which would then mitigate concerns about intergenerational equity. The city of Fort Atkinson also agreed to waive the payment in lieu of taxes, and it does result in a lower revenue requirement, which then translates to lower rates for customers. It also, as is noted in our decision matrix, it also indicates a commitment from the municipality in support of this particular proposal. So after staff went through and analyzed it, it results in about a 55% rate increase, and that is no small number. and it's not something to take lightly. I would note, and as staff notes, that 42% of that increase is for expense depreciation. And they have requested a 4.9% return on rate base. Again, it's a large increase. We've taken these up in the past, and I think we've used the analogy of you have to take your medicine, and it might not taste good, but in the interest of replacing this aging infrastructure, and we're going to see this more and more, sometimes it's best to take the increase in the beginning with the hopes that over the long term it's going to have the impact of reducing rates. So given the characteristics of their particular system and this plan to replace the mains, I'm going to be in a position to approve it. And I know that there are a couple, one unique aspect of this is that they've included a fixed charge related to this project. And I know that fixed charges get a lot of attention, and we talk about fixed charges a lot. And I think this is a case, at least for me, where it's really important that we look at the specific facts in front of us, and that decisions in one case don't necessarily serve to be a template for decisions in other cases. But where it makes sense and where the end result is a leveling of rates for customers, I think that it is within the public interest. So given the fact that we don't have to discuss any uncontested issues, our first item to discuss is issue 5, and this is the appropriate revenue allocation. The applicant proposed their revenue allocation and staff presented their revenue allocation. I think both of them are consistent. And again, given the unique circumstances in this particular case, I am going to accept the proposal to use that fixed main replacement charge. So for that reason, when it comes to appropriate revenue allocation, issue 5, I'm at alt 1. I would approve the revenue allocation proposed by Fort Act. Commissioner Nowak.
Yeah, thanks. And just some preliminary notes. I think the utility did a very nice job here. They've obviously thought through this and are looking to the future. As you noted, a lot of utilities are going to see this more and more as we reach nearing the end of the useful life of these pipes. And it's one of those things it's harder to spend the money on because you don't see it, but there's criticism if you don't when something goes bad. And so I think that they did a nice job working with the city on getting consensus, and also with their consultant coming forward with a plan that really does even out as best as possible the cost of this over time. They're not proposing to replace a lot. It's 1% per year. So it is a very, it's a slow but purposeful replacement that they're moving about. And just to clarify, the city, again, brought in, they're just waiving the pilot on that portion of, not their entire pilot, just on the portion of the main replacement. But I also, and so I do believe that it's necessary to have a separate, I guess, add-on to the fixed charge that already exists to help with the main replacement, so it provides a steady stream of revenue coming in. And I thought that their revenue allocation was appropriate, so I also will join you on alternative 1.
Okay.
First, just some opening comments. I think we've seen here, this is a really nice compromise between the city council and the water utility. As we said, number 1, the coordination between replacing the mains when they're going to do the streets, which makes a lot of sense. Number 2, waiving the pilot on this incremental expense, and that's a savings to taxpayers or to the ratepayers, but at the expense kind of the taxpayers in a way. So, but again, they're all working together to find a solution. And then third, I think a shout out to our staff. I asked, do you hear about this method of expense depreciation in other states? And they said that's kind of a Wisconsin homegrown idea, So it's a creative idea that's holding costs down, but getting the work done that needs to get done. So at the high level, I too will be supporting. As to alternative 1 or 2, this had with conditions, and I didn't know if that meant the conditions that we were going to approve later or conditions to this item. Regardless, I was at the a modified alternative 1. So I'm on 5A. I am not going to approve the fixed charge component. And the reason is because my understanding is those distribution mains today are paid for through the fire protection and volumetric rates. And I think that as you look at 1% a year, essentially in perpetuity here, that, I would just myself want to be more consistent. So I wouldn't join you on that. But I do think the revenue allocation, at the end of the day, I thought staff did a really nice job as well. And it's sort of a differential view. And I see both as reasonable, whether volume of water is the determinant factor, and that's the way staff usually does it, versus just having access to the service. And that's really the way Fort Atkinson's consultants came up with it. At the end of the day, I landed at the Fort Atkinson's, which is to say that more of the cost will be on the residential class and less on the industrial class. But I'm leaning on the city council because they have been presented with this and they have approved that and understood the trade-offs that rate design entails or that revenue allocation entails. So I think both are reasonable, but I'm going to land at the same spot you are, at alternative 1, but a modified, because I would not have the main replacement charge itemized out. And I know that's in 5A as well. So I don't know if that makes sense.
Okay, so you would propose how much of the increase is allocated to the different classes. You would go along with Fort Atkinson.
Yep.
But in terms of the amount of revenue, you would not include the main replacement charge.
Right. And that would be 5A. I was at alternative 2 to not approve that specific fixed charge, and instead the $143,000 would be collected. Because the way this is 15% through fixed and the volumetric rates or the other funds instead of the fixed.
Okay. All right. So you're at modified alt, and you would strike.
Right. I would strike the with
FAWU.
Yep.
Okay. All right. I'm going to just stay with the original alt.
Yeah, I think this makes the most sense. And for consistency over time, we need to have a stable revenue source, and it's just 15%. 85% is still going to be collected of this additional cost is going to be collected through volumetric rates. So I don't think 15% is too much is a burden at all. So I'm sticking with where I was.
Okay, so then going on to issue 5A, again, as we just touched on, the fixed main replacement charge is really the only difference between staff and applicant. And again, I know that in general, lower fixed charges tend to send the proper price signal, but I think in this particular case, as staff pointed out, I think that the applicant's proposal strikes that good balance between stability and affordability. So for this one, I was going to go with Alt 1. I would approve their proposal to add that fixed main replacement charge. Commissioner Noel?
Yeah, it's consistent with my position earlier. So yes, Alt 1.
And this is the one where I would be at alternative 2. And I will say, I think one of the previous cases we saw, maybe Janesville had a 38%. So the 15%, I would agree, is not unreasonable. It definitely strikes a balance. Their consultants in the city knew to look out for this issue, and I think they struck a fine balance. I just see it a little bit more on the alternative 2 myself. So.
Okay. All right. So then our next issue for decision is issue 7, and that is general conditions. Staff proposed to us a range of standard order conditions, and for this I was at Alt 2. I would include A through D, all of the proposed standard conditions. Commissioner Noel?
Yeah, same spot.
Commissioner Heath?
Me as well.
Okay. And issue 7A is conditions that are specific to this particular docket. And again, staff has suggested A through F, and the company or the applicant didn't take a position on anything other than condition F, and they supported condition F. So for this one, I'm also at alt 2. I would include all of the conditions listed.
Yep, I'm in the same spot again.
Yep, me as well. Thank you.
Then the next one is working. I know that the applicant had committed to develop a plan about the potential negative effects with lead service lines. The goal is to always avoid partial lead service line replacement and to replace it all at the same time where it's practical. So this is a proposed condition that would require Fort Atkinson to come up with a plan to minimize those partial replacements. So for this one, I would add alternative 1. I would require them to work, and this isn't different than what they committed to doing. So for this one, I'm at alt 1.
Yeah, the only thing on this when I first read it, I looked back to make sure this was a rate case and not a construction case because I thought it was a bit out of place here to bring it up. And it's a weird situation where really it's more under the DNR's authority than ours. We've talked about avoiding the partial replacement situation. So since they've already, and there's very few, it seems like in the jurisdiction that they have to address, they are aware of it. My inclination was like, they're on it. I don't know that we need another order point. They already know they need to address it. They've already committed to do it. So I'm not sure what adding I kind of trust the locals here to do what they've said and also to follow the DNR's encouragement and rules that they already have to follow. So I'm not sure what an order point, how that's additive to what's already been committed. So I was just kind of leaning on not just putting it as an order point just because I think we need to be more concise and tight in our orders about exactly what is clearly in our lane for jurisdiction. So I was okay with leaving it out just because they've already committed to do it. They already know they have to do it. They have to listen to the DNR. So I'm not, again, I could leave it out. I think that's a better answer. I mean,
yeah, I was at alternative 1. I think it's just mostly continuing to check that because obviously it's not our direct jurisdiction, as you said, but I think that it's critically important. So I was at alternative 1.
Okay. The final issue is issue 9, and that is one additional reporting requirement, and it's just to continue to provide additional detail that because they're using the expense depreciation method, it was suggested that perhaps they add that information to their annual report, and the applicant doesn't have an issue with it, and I think it's important, especially because it's not the norm. So I was at alternative 2 for issue 9.
The only thing I would add here is that they clarify with staff ahead of time, because the in the statement here it says similar to the detail included in staff's exhibit. Just before the annual reports do have a clear understanding with staff of what the expectations are and what is feasible for them to do, that it's not too burdensome, that it can be done timely, rather than, so I just want them and staff to work together and make it clear, not so that, because the word similar kind of worried me a bit, so, but I'm fine with putting it in there.
Yeah, I'm in the same spot, alternative 2. I think, as you said, Chair, this is the third one, so it's still relatively new, and Of course, each community is different, so it's a little bit of paying it forward. Let's get the information so that if future communities can use this, we've got more information to analyze those with as well. So, great.
Both fine with Commissioner Noakella.
Yep.
Okay. Docket 2060-WR106, I move that we approve the application of the City of Fort Atkinson for authority to adjust water rates pursuant to our discussion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that concludes our official business for today. The next open meeting is scheduled for Thursday, July 1st, 2021 at 10:30 a.m.
Move to stand adjourned until July 1st.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thanks, everyone.